What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today I'm going to go over my top 10 favorite standalone books of all time. So let's start with a couple of honorable mentions. Number one is going to be World War Z by Max Brooks. Now, the reason I have this book as an honorable mention and not on the list is because when I first read this book, I actually only gave it like 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a good book, but I had some problems with getting through some of the prose and the structure of the book, the way it was broken up into interviews. But now that I've had time to sit on it, it has really moved up on my list. It is a fantastic book. I know it might seem silly to some people that it's a zombie book. It's more than that. It really is. It's a wonderful book that really does a deep dive on humanity and the human condition, especially in the face of fear and adversity. So it's a wonderful book. Obviously, yes, there's zombies in it. So if you're not up to that, this may not be the book for you. To me, this is a fantastic book. So the reason why this book did not make it on the list is because when I initially read it, I only gave it like 3 out of 5 stars. I liked it, but I didn't love it. And now that I've had more time to sit with it, it's really moved its way up on the list because I catch myself thinking about it more and more. So the reason why it's not quite on the list is because I still don't think it has really settled yet. So once it settles, I'll be able to know where it sits on the list and be able to go from there. Because right now, I'm just really not sure. It moved from a 3-star to a 5-star book for me. So that's why it hasn't quite made it on the list yet. And the second honorable mention is going to be The Count of Monte Cristo. This may be one of those takes where people start flipping tables, but the reason why it didn't make it on the list is because I haven't finished it yet. I have read the first half twice and I've stopped. Not because it was bad, but because life got in the way. And so there were just things that went on that I wasn't able to return to the book. And over time, I found myself just not forgetting about it, but just thinking I'll finish it later. And now it's been about 3 years since I picked it back up. So I plan to finish it this year, and I fully expect it to usurp one of these others that is on the list. So let's go ahead and jump right into the list. Starting at number 10 is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I read this book just a few months ago. I thought it was fantastic. Again, it asks the question, just because we can do something, does that mean that we should? And it is another deep dive into the human condition. There's not really a lot that I can say about Frankenstein that hasn't been said already or that people don't already know, except for the monster himself in the book is not who people make him out to be. And in the book, he is such a layered character. So I highly recommend this book if you haven't picked it up already. It was a fantastic read for the Halloween season. So I loved this book. Pick it up if you haven't already. But Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, it's fantastic. And that leads me into number 9, which is Darth Plagueis by James Luceno. This book is phenomenal. I loved Star Wars growing up. I loved this extended universe, or I think they now call it the Legends. I won't even get into the Disney stuff or the new stuff. They almost ruined Star Wars for me. But for the extended universe or the Star Wars Legends collection, to me, this is an excellent place for somebody to start that loved Star Wars. Because in the original trilogy, they keep talking about how evil Sidious is. And then also in the prequels, they're telling us how evil Palpatine is. And while I think as an audience, we accept that, we never see it as much. And this book shows exactly how sinister he can be. And so this is a wonderful look into what was occurring behind the curtain of all the movies, of how he came to power, all the things that he has interwoven together to accomplish his evil, his wicked and vile plan. It's just phenomenal to kind of peer into that window that we didn't get to see before. So I highly recommend this to any Star Wars fan. Number 8 is going to be The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. This book was phenomenal. I read this just last month. Absolutely loved it. I'd already seen the movie, so the end was a little bit spoiled for me, but I loved reading this book. Apparently, this book is a little polarizing with the audiences. I don't see and didn't see any sort of sympathizing with Nazi Germany in this. I actually saw this as a deep dive to character study and overcoming prejudices and empathy with other humans. And it also revealed how malleable children's minds are. So this is a fantastic book. If you finish this book with dry eyes, there's something wrong with you. So I love this book. It is about a World War II. It is a story about the son of a Nazi general who is the overseer of a concentration camp, who befriends one of the little Jewish boys that is in the camp. So this is a fantastic story, a fantastic World War II historical fiction book. I highly recommend it. So that leads me to the next one, which is going to be Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. Now, I picked this book up because I watched the movie and loved it. I loved the anime movie. My kids love it. But there were things about the movie that I didn't like. I don't like how Miyazaki always goes into, he always has to have a message behind his stories. He's very anti-war. He's very much a pacifist. He seems to be very dug into some of his beliefs and wants to make sure that those things are at the forefront of his work, which is entirely his prerogative. However, it's those things that usually don't work for me in those movies. And so when we watched the movie, all of the magic and all of the whimsy was just phenomenal. I loved that part. And when it leaned into the war, I checked out a little bit. And so this book that the movie is based on, the entire book is that whimsical, magical, fun type of book. So if you liked the first half of the movie more than the second half, then you'll love this book. It is fantastic. So this leads me to number 6, which is going to be Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This book just makes you, it will tie your brain in a knot. In the words of Talladega Nights,
my hands all tied up like a pretzel. I got a pretzel in my hand.
It was wild. The way he's able to describe alternate dimensions and to tie these things together is fantastic. Now, I do want to make sure that I put a pin in this and let you know that there are some adult themes here. There is adult language in this. So do not think that this is me saying this is for all readers, because it is not. This is a phenomenal science fiction book that really does a deep dive into alternate dimensions. And I really don't want to go into it very much because I don't want to give anything away, but this book is fantastic. So now we're into our top 5, and number 5 is going to be The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This book really struck a chord with me. I tend to like to listen to some sort of ambient music while I'm reading because I either have to have silence or I can't have anything that's distracting going on around me. Otherwise, I can't focus on what I'm reading. So a lot of times I like to put headphones on or put some ambient music on to kind of immerse me into this world while I'm reading it. When certain pieces of classical music came on while reading the last few pages of this book, there were tears just pouring out of my eyes. This is the most tragic book I've ever read, and also one of the best books I've ever read. Now, I will say that there were some things about this book that I wasn't crazy about. One of which is there's a whole chapter that is just Victor Hugo describing the skyline of Paris, and I pretty much just skipped it. My father-in-law really wanted me to read this book, so I picked it up, and I got to that chapter, and it's pretty lengthy, and I got a few pages in, and so I just texted him, and I was like, is this entire chapter just describing the bird's eye view of Paris? And he said, yes. And I said, okay. And so I skipped it because I don't really need to go into all of that description. I just thought it was excessive. And so, full transparency, I just skipped over that chapter or skimmed over it. And then I went right back into the story because I'm here for the story more than anything else. But this book, man, it's amazing. Now, this book is for a more seasoned reader because the language is a little harder to grasp. It is a little more of a challenge to read the book. You have to put forth more effort. This isn't one of those that I think you could just listen to on audiobook and be fine with. There's a lot of intricacies to the writing, a lot of nuance to it, but this book is absolutely amazing. So make sure you pick it up if you haven't already. And this brings me to book number 4, which is going to be The Martian by Andy Weir. I absolutely love this book. However, before I go into it, if you haven't read this book and you want to, please pick up the student edition. I think you can still find it in bookstores. I know you can still find it on Amazon, and if not, you can find it on eBay. And the reason why I recommend that is because I believe this became a required reading in some schools, and it has quite a bit of language in it. So if you're going to read this book, pick up the student edition. I am so appreciative of the fact that they did that, which shows me that he could have done that. So, that was a drawback, is the language, but this story is phenomenal. If you've seen the movie and you like the movie, you'll love the book. It is so good. Now, I will also say there is an epilogue that was removed from the book after it was published with a traditional publisher that you can find online. And so if you read the book and you love the book, go and find that last little epilogue because it's hilarious. And so this book is just, it's tragic, it's thought-provoking, and it's absolutely hilarious. To me, Mark Watney's character, that would be me if I was trapped on Mars, except for I'm not as smart as he is. So this book was so funny and so much fun to read. So I highly recommend it. Number 3 on the list is going to be Dracula by Bram Stoker. This book is so good. This is not just the best horror book I've ever read, which I haven't read that many, but this is also one of my favorite books of all time. It is so good. The way the book is structured, it's written in the form of letters that you're reading after the fact. But somehow while reading these letters, knowing that the writer of the letter survived because they had to in order to send the letter, you're still at the edge of your seat about what happens. But this book is less of what you would imagine the story of Dracula as, and it's much more of that constant looming dread over our characters. It is that constant looming dread over the land and how good can overcome evil. It is such a phenomenal book. Now, I know some people say this book dabbles in the dark arts, and, I don't know that Christians should be reading that. I mean, use your own judgment here. I didn't see that. To me, it's a vampire book. It's the vampire book. It's the vampire story. It's phenomenal. Now, again, it is an adult book. It does touch on some more mature themes, but I love the way that Bram Stoker wrote the book because, number one, the time that he wrote it, you couldn't be as explicit, and also he didn't need to be. We understand some of the things that are going on within the story. He didn't have to come right out and be explicit in his writing. He knows that his audience is intelligent. It's also a short read, but to me, this is the best book that you can read around Halloween time. So if you haven't picked it up yet, I highly recommend that you do. Number 2 is going to be The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, some people throw this in with Lord of the Rings, but it technically is a standalone book. It is phenomenal. What is there to say about The Hobbit that hasn't already been said? It is the introduction to Middle-earth. It is a great gateway for young readers who maybe aren't quite ready to dive into Lord of the Rings, that you can hand them The Hobbit. They get pulled into Middle-earth. They get pulled into the story of Bilbo and the Ring without having to navigate the language barriers and those types of things that they are going to experience as a young reader diving into Lord of the Rings. Phenomenal book, phenomenal characters by a phenomenal author. I mean, there really isn't a whole lot for me to say about The Hobbit that hasn't already been said. It's a fantastic book. Obviously, that's why it's on my number 2 list. And it is, as far as fantasy standalones, it is the best one of all time. Which leads me into my number 1 standalone book of all time, which is also my favorite book of all time. And that's going to be Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. This book is flawless. This book is the best book I've ever read. This book is the reason why my family has a dog. This book is one of the reasons why I'm able to look at things a little more introspectively. And this book brought me to tears so hard and so fast, and has the greatest twist I've ever seen in any story ever. It's a flawless book. It's absolutely flawless. Every word is amazing. And so you are reading, I don't want to get too far into it because I may do a dedicated review of this. I mean, you're reading about a boy's life in the 1950s. And so this is post World War II. It's in small town, Alabama. And you are experiencing life through the eyes of, I think, a 10-year-old boy. And so there are some things that he remembers about his life that aren't entirely reliable. There are fantastical elements to this book. When you read it, you're like, how that doesn't make any sense because this is the real world, but it's how he experienced it and how he recalls it. Is there were some fantastical things that occurred. But man, this book, if you read this book and you love this book and it doesn't break your heart and also give you that sense of encouragement and love and family, then you're reading it wrong. I mean, it is so good. Again, favorite book of all time, favorite standalone of all time, bar none. And I doubt that it will ever be topped or usurped. So if you haven't read Boy's Life, if I can only get you to read one book on this entire list, it is Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. Hands down. Please pick it up if you haven't already. It's not that long. It's a wonderful story. Please, please pick it up. It is amazing. And just do yourself a favor and read it because you're missing out. Now, you may not know that you're missing out, but you are. And once you read this, you'll realize you've missed out all these years by not reading it. It is phenomenal. Please pick it up. So guys, that's my top 10 standalones as of 2025. I fully expect this list to change within the next few years. Certainly hope so. I hope I read some wonderful books that will topple some of these books off of my list. I fully expect them to. Let me know if you guys have any standalones that I haven't read or didn't mention. Let me know down in the comment section some of the books that I should pick up, and I will add some of them. I don't think I'm just saying that. I will add them to my overflowing Amazon cart. Leave those down in the comment section below. Guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It genuinely does help the channel out. It gets these videos out in front of more eyes. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so, which is what brings me to please share these videos because I want to be a good resource to other Christian brothers and sisters that want to spend their time, energy, and money more wisely on things that do not dishonor the Lord. So please share these videos with your brothers and sisters. And that's why I ask you to hit the thumbs up because it will get this in front of more eyes because there are people out there that are looking for videos like this because I was one of them. So if you would, please do me a favor, share this with your Christian brothers and sisters. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.